Martynyuk with us from... Oh, also, a quick reminder, our event will be recorded into languages in Ukrainian and English, so that later on you can go back to the recording. You can send us a request and we will send you a recording. So, speakers, Andriy Martynyuk from Ecoclub NGO, Natalia Kotsanivska, Director of the Department of Public Utilities of the Ministry of Communities, Territories, and Infrastructure Development of Ukraine, Andriy Vadym, Deputy Director, also Mr. Winfried Damm, Director of the ReWarm Ukraine project at GIZ, also Vadym Lytvyn, Head of the Association of Energy Auditors of Ukraine, Ms. Elena Lenska, Director of the Renewable Energy Development Department at the State Agency on Energy Efficiency, and representatives from Zviahel City Council, Ms. Ludmila Todorovich and Yuriy, Savych, Head of the Department for Support of Public Initiatives and Energy Efficiency. I'm your moderator today, so if you have any questions, you can submit them to the chat box because we have quite a few participants. So most likely we will not be able to ask all of the questions out loud. And we already have some questions, and I will read them from the chat box. So first, I'd like to give the floor for the introductory remarks to set the groundwork, the context, to talk about the activities of Ecoclub, about the situation and context with the district heating, and the new approach that we're using in central heating. Andriy, over to you. Good morning, colleagues. Our moderator is Mikhail Lukyanik, who is the project coordinator and an expert from Ecoclub NGO. So I, first and foremost, would like to thank you for finding the time to join us today. Time is a very essential resource. And I would like to try and briefly demonstrate from which angle we're looking at central heating and why environmental NGO has been working with district heating for a few years now. Well, I would like to start with the background. In Ryvne, in our hometown, that adopted a program of compensation for the tariffs, the private company that is renting district heating networks in the city of Ryvne. And judging from the program that was adopted by the city council, our city is planning to give 150 million of our tax so that people would pay less for their district heating fee. But sadly, this kind of an approach cannot be exactly called productive. And prior to the war, we had quite a huge debate during the session of the city council back in the day. And then I think it was 270 million that the city allocated in the course of the year. Why was it not quite productive? Because according to the director, the back then director of Ryvne Toploenergo, the losses in networks were up to 30%. And talking about the end of 2021, the amount necessary for reconstruction was over 4 million. So we were given so much money, the money that now we're handing over to the private company that is working on district heating, and we're trying to insulate everything, all of the heating mains, and we're trying to decrease it by 30%. But at the time, we're paying our tax to basically preserve this not quite good and positive situation. And I'd like to remind you that during the war, these are 150 million that could have been used to buy some drones or some other amazing things. So this is what is happening right now in Ryvne. We're planning to do something about it, but this is a very bright example showing that at times of war, you cannot ignore challenges for the district heating. We have to do something. And we are trying to take a more comprehensive look at it. Why Western Europe in many cities is trying to develop district heating? Because we have to stick to the commitments under Paris Agreement and reaching climate neutrality by 2050, because we're already living through the climate crisis. And for example, in Ryvne, the objective data demonstrates that over the last 30 years, the temperature increased by 1.1 Celsius degrees. That is why we do not have frost anymore. And we are also on our path towards EU association. And clearly, the commitments will be becoming stricter and stricter. So the cities will have to reach climate neutrality. If we're talking about the EU, then by 2050, but if we're talking about the same now, the commitments that Ukraine has assumed by 2060, which practically means that in district heating, we're supposed to stop using natural gas. And we should substitute it with various other resources. First and foremost, of course, we're talking about using less heat with the help of energy efficiency, which also contributes to the economic development in the communities. But it's clear that with the current housing situation, which takes up about 80% of heat energy, with the houses that have zero consumption is almost impossible, practically impossible. That is why we have to work on developing district heating. Another is a very unpopular opinion in Ukraine is that these assets of the district heating, the heating mains, boiler units, all of the assets that we have inherited back from the Soviet days and that we are using in a rather inept and clumsy way for decades. As a result, they are becoming worse and worse. For example, like in Uzhhorod that has completely discarded district heating. In other places, this process is happening slower and the new houses are not connected to the district heating system. So these are the things that are happening, the one that I have just mentioned when talking about Shrivna. Why are we talking about this asset? Because to achieve real climate neutrality, the presence of this asset seriously decreases the cost for the Ukrainians when it comes to greenhouse gases emissions. Why is that, you may wonder? Because, say, if you have a large boiler, a house, you can switch it to other kind of bioresources rather than changing situation in every separate house or even an apartment. It is way cheaper. And also, you can provide for proper way of using and maintaining it. And this is what lays the foundation. Probably Winfried will add to that later on. And this is basically what is now being relied on by the Europeans who are trying to invest into district heating. And it looks like in Ukraine at the moment, we do not have the vision of how to do, what to do next with the district heating. People objectively are not happy with the quality of the district heating. And that's a pretty obvious result. At the same time, it is a strategic goal that I have already mentioned, the climate neutrality goals, and that is necessary to decrease consumption of fossil fuels. Well, it seems to me that we have to already now put it on the agenda. And we have to think about what do we do with the district heating networks in Ukraine. And the first question is, which technology do we want to see in the district heating? This does not need to be only one specific technology. It can be different. It can be heat pumps for some cities and towns, the use of biomass and different types of biomass depending on oblast of the country, maybe some other technology. Of course, central district heating should also be energy efficient on all sides, which means that we have to create the necessary regulatory framework for it all. And one more thing, forecasting the ownership structure for all the assets that we already have in our country, because it looks like the utilities companies or cities and towns are not exactly efficient owners all the time. The prerequisite for that is the state policy, but it's hard to say whether it completely defines it or not, because there are some successful examples how the cities and towns are modernizing the district heating. And another thing is that we seriously lack state bodies which would work on implementing current legislation, which is very relevant for district heating, especially from the nature protection perspective, because if we keep increasing the use of biomass, the question is, where do we get this biomass? And can we get this biomass without harming the environment? Or do we get it as a result of soil erosion and damage to forests? And this question is already open now. We have the competitor for biomass in Ryvny. A large Corona spawn facility was constructed that uses a lot of wood waste, and they are planning to increase it because it is about 20% if we're talking about the countrywide situation. And the forests that are providing this wood might not continue being forests. They may turn into parks. So this is a pretty risky situation too. So we need state bodies that will provide for proper function. So this was in a nutshell a very brief description of the current context in Ukraine. And I'd like to once again reiterate, I'm really grateful to all the speakers and all the attendees. Thank you. Thank you, Andriy. And I would like to please ask the colleagues who are not speaking or presenting currently to keep their microphones mute. Darina and someone else, could you please keep your mics mute so that we are not interfering and interrupting? Okay, I guess Andriy touched upon the overall context, the state policy when it comes to district heating. So I think it makes sense to now give the floor to Ms. Natalia Khotsanivska, Director of the Department of Public Utilities of the Ministry of Communities, and her deputy, Mr. Dmit. So please unmute yourself and tell us about what does the state think regarding this. Greetings to all the participants and attendees. Well, I'd like to say that Mr. Martynuk's presentation was quite a pessimistic one, so I'd like to add a pinch of optimism when it comes to the district heating systems and to inform the participants about the vision of the ministry as to how the sector should develop further. I do agree that it is true that in the majority of towns, cities, and settlements, the district heating system was constructed back during the Soviet days. And the system was supposed to work with a way higher capacity. In many large cities, there were large industrial enterprises that were connected to the district heating systems, as well as dormitories where the workers of these enterprises lived, and all of the network and all of the utilities back from the 60s. Of course, over the years, it required and still requires a lot of investment to modernize it, to change a huge diameter of the pipes. And clearly, up to this day, there was no such funds to modernize it all. So yes, the level of losses in networks is pretty high, and on average, it is 19.5%. But the cities that paid a lot of attention to this issue, realizing that decreasing losses in networks, that energy efficient measures in the end will have an impact on the tariffs for the consumers as well as the quality of the services provided. And let's take a Zhytomyr example. The losses are not going above 7 or 8%. That is why I second that this is a different approach, but it depends on the financial resources and funding. Currently, the ministry is working on doing the inventory of the technical condition in this sector and to define how much funding is necessary to improve the situation. And now is a pretty high time to focus on these issues. But going back to early March, early February 2022, I am convinced that all the Ukrainians were very grateful to the utility companies' workers because they had district heating, they had water supply, they had electricity, and everyone really appreciated it. So, please do not forget to mute your microphone, those who are not presenting at the moment. And now I would like to go back to the work that has been done, because I have mentioned the situation was the technical situation. The ministry is working on looking for funding too, and is gonna activize more and more, because we understand that without engaging foreign investment, Ukraine will not be able to cope, because it is clear to each and every one of us that this will be their money from local budgets or money of the consumers through the investment program that will be included into the tariff.
Хочу зважити ще на інше, що кожне підприємство...
At the same time, I would like to draw attention to the following. Each enterprise, each economic operator at the process of registration of their business activities have in mind making profit with their business. Due to historic reasons, the sector of district heating as well as hot water supply are loss-making in Ukraine. And it doesn't even depend on the form of ownership, be it private or municipal enterprise, they are all loss-making. What is happening currently in this sector, and why is it loss-making nowadays? That could be explained by the fact that with the beginning of the full-scale invasion into the territory of Ukraine, the parliament has passed the law on that put on a ban on increase in utility tariffs. Even though in 2021 were the prerequisites for the raise in tariffs. They were economic substantiations by the government why the tariffs had to be raised, and that process was flawed, unfortunately. By starting 2021, there was a memorandum of understanding concluded between the authorities and the businesses. That memorandum provided for the non-increase of tariffs. 4% of the personal income tax was supposed to be directed on covering the spending on heating for the companies. That is my response to Andriy with regard to the program that has been in place in Rivne for a couple of years now. And you know, that story goes on even now. If there is a ban on the increase in tariffs, and the enterprises have to pay their bills, these bills are covered by the local government bodies. That is why the city of Rivne came up with this program that you mentioned. The program to cover for the expenditures on natural gas. And yes, this is an option that complies with the agreements that were made between the Ukrainian Cities Association and respectively the enterprises and companies and the government. Speaking about the quality of services and the dissatisfaction of end consumers, I would argue that I agree that there are some cases when the temperature in the district heating network is not high enough. Let's take a look at a broader picture. What is the quality of maintenance of the networks inside the buildings? Are the maintenance works carried out in a timely manner? Is that only the blame? uh, um, can we blame only the heat supplying company? Well, in fact, not. Ukrainian society is not ready yet to abide by the rules and the norms that are set out at the government level. This is why we have this situation in place. Some some consumers do not have the sufficient heat coming to their buildings, but we cannot put all the blame on the heat services suppliers. But at least I myself, I live in an apartment myself, and I can attest to the fact that today the temperature that during this season the temperature was comfortable. I didn't have to open the windows, so it was not too hot, but it was not too cold either. I didn't wear my t-shirt inside, but I was able to feel rather comfortable in my one-bedroom apartment. The cost of heat supply is rather high, and we need to save in this sphere. The consumers also have to appreciate the fact that they enjoy the district heating system and they have to take measures in terms of energy saving. It cannot be wasted. Let me outline a number of other issues. I already mentioned a ban on the increase in tariffs for end consumers. I would like also to say that there were some attempts on regulating the cost of natural gas. Natural gas that is used for generation of heat, both for the residential buildings and for the state-owned enterprises. The cost for the residential buildings and for consumers is much lower. Therefore, it is compensated from the state budget. In July 2023, there was a decision made on canceling this moratorium for the other type of consumers, for instance, commercial users. For instance, if there is a pharmacy in a building, it had to pay a market price for the gas, which was much higher compared to the price for the residential users. But at the same time, this ban is still in force. The ministry wants to change this situation gradually, as we will never have sufficient financial resources if in 2024 the consumers are paying their utility bills at the tariffs that were set in 2018, 2019. For instance, Vinnytsia Oblenergo has losses, and the price is 2,900, and the contract with Naftogaz Trading is for 7,400. Sometimes they do not even have enough funds to pay salaries to their employees. The tariffs that have been applied for the enterprises for a number of years are
Рівень розрахунків в більшості
help a
випадків
lot in
базувався
terms of the budget
певними
proceedings,
механізмами
as there is the
бюджету.
payment discipline over there,
Звичайно, до
and it
сьогодні
is about
більшість
90%.
підприємств більше
Until
ніж
today,
стабільно
most
працюють
enterprises are operational in a stable
завдяки
manner,
інвестиціям, які роблять органи місцевого
thanks to the
самоврядування.
investments from the local
На
government.
сьогодні це досить потужний фінансовий ресурс,
Currently,
вливається в
this
всі
is
банки.
substantial financial support to these enterprises. Let me give you an example. In 2022,
підприємства Житомир-Теплоенерго
Zhytomyr Teplоенерго
було
municipal
проінвестовано.
enterprise.
Зараз хвилиночку, хотіла швидко
Just a
сказати,
second, I want to find an exact figure for the amount of investment.
Так, було навіть за 23 рік. Значна сума.
All right,
493
2023,
мільйони
493 million.
на рахунки підприємства для
This is
забезпечення
the amount that was
енергії.
transferred to the account of this enterprise to provide for its operations. Lutsk Teplo, they received over 300 million. 214 million were transferred to another enterprise, to Zhytomyr Teplоенерго. Ms. Katsanivsky, could you just stick to the point that we cannot cover all the issues that you are mentioning? Yes, sure, I will keep it to the point. Of course, it is not possible to give all the information within 15 minutes, so let me just respond to particular questions. Well, you see, we had a question that regards the price setting policy and the tariff setting policy. As far as I understand, there are no specific changes in this area. No, you were not listening carefully to what I mentioned. I said that the ministry is currently considering gradual transition to the tariffs that would be substantiated from the economic point of view. Nowadays, we have the following situation. 3% of enterprises pay the price for gas that is lower than the actual market price. For 70%, the market price is taken into due account. Therefore, we would like to give the following option for the enterprises. For those 30% that are paying the lower prices, for instance, 2,900 or over 4,000, these were the prices in accordance with the regulations that were set back in the days. But we would like to carry out the leveling measures. For the next heating season, we would like to apply the tariffs that would contain all the factors that are regulated at the state level. That would include the salaries and also the taxes, the tariffs on distribution of natural gas. Even though the war still is ongoing, the tariffs have to be aligned with the economic considerations. They have to be substantiated. Is it just for the gas? Well, initially we will start with the gas, but then we will apply the same approach for all the other tariffs that are regulated by the state. In 2026, we would like to align all the tariffs with the economically substantiated tariffs. Thank you, Natalia. Do you have any questions? Well, if you have any questions, just type them into our chat box. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Winfried Damm, the representative of GIZ project. For those who need to listen to the interpretation, just go to the Ukrainian channel and mute the original.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen. That's the case that you can see my screen of the presentation. Okay, great. So you've been asking myself to talk about the experience of district heating in Europe. So I'm happy to do it with some application for the Ukrainian side. So let me briefly introduce, first of all, GIZ. So GIZ is paid by the German government. We are working in more than 120 countries and have about 25,000 employees worldwide, out of which are about 500 working in Ukraine. And I am sure that you are sharing my slides later on, so no one has to write along, and that all the figures can be looked up later on. So this gives you a brief impression about what we are doing in Ukraine as GIZ, and we are happy to serve Ukraine free of cost to Ukraine, paid by the German taxpayers. Mainly because to make sure that Ukraine is entering EU, and we are keen on decarbonization worldwide. Let me come to district heating. District heating is one of the key elements for the heating sector in Europe. So envisaging decarbonization by 2050 in the EU, it's the most economical solution in urban areas. And it's requested by the EU in cities and will expand very significantly pan-Europe. Of course, it should be very convenient, saves a lot of spaces, and it can be environmentally sound and carbon neutral. And most important, it can be profitable. And it's the most, as I mentioned, economical solution. So some numbers in regards to district heating market in the EU. So you can see, of course, the northern countries are fairly strong in it. Let me continue. I'll start with the gigawatt hours per year. So you have Poland, Germany, Czechoslovakia, France, Denmark, Finland, and Austria. Sorry, this is the capacity. If you're looking on the gigawatt hours on the right side, you see the development over the last years, depending, of course, from the external temperatures. And there you see Germany, Poland, and again, the North European countries. Here is the numbers of pipeline of the grids. And again, you can see fairly similar names, Germany, Poland, but also with very advanced technology, Sweden, Denmark, and a few others. So you're all aware about the EU goals for 2050. So we are on the way to reduce carbon emissions very significantly. This slide gives you some impression what will be the future increase of district heating in Europe. And you can see that, for example, in Germany, about 300 to 600,000 households per year will be added to the district heating grid, according to the projections to achieve non-carbon future. In Ukraine, you have a kind of vicious circle. So because the attractiveness of the service is not given, very many people try to get out of district heating, reducing the heat demand in a specific area, increasing, of course, the cost for that district heating network. So this has to be avoided by improving the service level and the appreciation of district heating. As is been told by the ministries, district heating right now is producing quite a number of losses. So the expectations or some numbers were given by the colleagues from USAID, Tetra Tech in 2020 for 2018, amounting to very many billions of hryvnia. So from my perspective, one should have a frank discussion about how the district heating sector should be organized in Ukraine, and the corresponding regulations which are required. Let me come up for the general principles for district heating one should envisage. So the most important thing is to make things commercially viable and to make profitable. Put energy efficiency first. So wherever you can, reduce costs and losses. So this would start later on the demand side, continues to supply side. Use local heat planning. Use wherever you can waste heat to be taken up by the system. Of course, from a state perspective, you need to ensure end user protection and enable viable business models. And as a next step, try to include renewable energy system integration. If we come to the history of district heating, how it has developed, so you might be aware the literature is talking about first to fifth generation of district heating systems. The key issue behind this discussion is, again, energy efficiency and the temperature level provided in the grid and required from the end consumer. So in the initial phase, we were talking of very high temperatures. Now we are talking in the advanced countries of the fourth generation of district heating, with temperatures even go as a forward temperature going below 70 degrees. What does it mean, fourth generation? Fourth generation of district heating implies that you start to include any kind of heat source in your system at any point. So it's not a one boiler, one CHP plant somewhere providing the entire heat for the entire grid, but include all potential heat sources. On the other hand, reduce the forward temperature and the return temperature as much as possible to maximize the spread of temperature, reducing the pump energy required, and incentivize the end consumer to go and use this. So lower the temperature, the easier is it to include heat pumps, for example. One nice example is Damm in Denmark. So this has been already rolled out. It's existing, you can visit it quite nicely. The forward temperatures is as low as around 71 to 74 degrees Celsius. The return temperature is as low as 32 to 38. And the entire system is also based around a large storage tank, making it possible to absorb heat supply at any point in time and decouple it from the demand side. I talked about energy efficiency first on all levels. So this would imply, from my perspective, to replace a one-pipe system by a two-pipe system, or to put it differently, make sure that you don't regulate by opening a window and that you have the opportunity to make sure that you get the temperature you like. So there's no one externally providing you with a specific temperature which you have to take, but it's your consumer choice to decide whether you want to have 15 degrees, 18 degrees, 20 degrees, or even 24 degrees. As long as you pay for it, from my perspective, that's fine. And you have the choice and you pay with your own funds. This would imply, as a second step, that you meter each apartment and bill accordingly. And by the way, this is a requirement of the new EU regulation 23/1791. So if Ukraine wants to become member of the EU, this has to be followed anyhow. The faster it's being done, the better for everyone. Another major step would be to install individual heating stations, or you might call them substations, for each building. The importance is to decouple the hydrological, the water systems within the buildings and the water coming from the heat sources. So this would make it possible to increase the efficiency fairly significantly and decouple the temperature circles between those two things. If you're coming to the grid side, of course, start to chase water losses. Try to avoid any water loss. If there's someone taking out water illegally, this needs to be penalized very significantly, because to bring in new water is extremely costly, not only because of demineralization, but also because of the heating required to heat this new fresh water up to the level of the district heating grid. When we have reduced the temperature, adopt accordingly the pumps and make them up to the current status. And the modern pumps require at maximum only about 10 to 20% of the existing electricity demand of a very old pump. Reduce heat losses wherever you can, and as I mentioned, allow proper grids by reducing the temperatures as much as possible. For doing this, please do it holistically. So if possible, have an energy plan for the entire city, including a local heat planning with various scenarios for the future. Then you are aware where you have the demand in the future, how much it will be lowered. And take, for example, East Germany as this very similar experience more than 20 years ago. The heat demand has been reduced more or less by half due to the improvements in the buildings and the necessity of paying what you use. Here are some details of the energy directive, which I mentioned before. Feel free to get into the details. The next major topic was look for waste heat and think about heat storage. Of course, digitalize wherever possible, also to improve your services and to reduce costs significantly. Start with a SCADA system, a GIS system, which is hopefully available in most cities by now. But if it's lacking, please go for it. Install sensors and meters wherever reasonable and analyze that data. Artificial intelligence will bring even more tools in the future to improve and detect errors and problems in your grid. Of course, you need a leakage detection system, an energy management software, smart metering, remote readable, and an appropriate billing system with a customer portal and the app, which is part of the services customers are requiring nowadays. I got across a nice example in Ukraine, in Lviv. So I think Freiburg from Germany supported this. I haven't visited myself, but probably there are nice examples, and Chitomir had been mentioned already. What are the success factors? From literature, we have some external success factors like adequate national policy, and I'm happy to have the ministry today with us, mentioning that they are working on those things. Yes, we need direct or indirect financial support. So we were talking about the gas prices. We were talking about the investment requirements and interest rates, but also local policy and coherent urban planning is required, as well as the alignment of all interests within that city and local environment. There are quite a number of internal success factors. So you need local resources, you need comprehensive project development, you need price competitiveness against alternative energy solutions. We have to talk about flexible heat and cold production and combining technical and non-technical innovations. And the ReWarm project I have the chance to head has the opportunity to provide at least 3 municipalities in Ukraine with free of cost support in envisaging and in developing such long-term strategy for its own district heating system and environment. So if anyone is interested, feel free to reach out to us, and we have to check into the details. If you need further information on district heating in general, what's going on in Europe, here are some links provided where you find quite a number of interesting papers and further support. Thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Дуже дякую, пан Winfried.
Thank you so much, Winfried. I think there will be quite a few questions, but I have a suggestion. Let us hold our questions for the end of the event, because I think that we're already behind our schedule. Is it okay? Do you not mind?
That's fine.
Okay. So, amazing. Amazing. Okay, colleagues, then I suggest you process what Winfried presented, and now we give the floor to our next speaker, Ms. Olena Lenska, from State Agency on Energy Efficiency and Energy Saving of Ukraine. And we would like to find out more about the vision of such a large institution. Maybe there will be some programs, maybe there will be some plans of the programs. Greetings. It is a pleasure to participate in today's event, to see the colleagues from Ecoclub, because we're closely cooperating with you. And I would like to express the gratitude to Ecoclub first and foremost for the active position, for bringing together various stakeholders in energy domain, and for the optimism, understanding that with the help of such a synergy, you can be way more productive to work on some pressing issues. And I think it is good that we are talking about the district heating at the end of the heating season, the second heating season since the beginning of the full-scale Russia's invasion. This topic is vital for the critical infrastructure. At the moment, there are over 1,000 state-owned enterprises that are using district heating starting October till mid-April. And it is worth mentioning that the second winter was easier compared to the previous one for a number of objective and subjective reasons. But we understand that without resolving the systemic issues, without rebooting the district heating sector, and without introducing the energy market, I understand that it is difficult now, but at least making some advancements in this domain, we will not be able to withstand the competition. We might lose all of the competitive advantages that the district heating is given to us and lose it to the individual heating as well as electric heating. And we understand that pretty well. Aside from that, it was already mentioned that for a number of objective reasons, the human migration, the consumption of heating energy is also decreasing. And this also poses certain challenges for the grid. And that is why it is necessary to implement some measures that will allow to improve the productivity of district heating, because without it, it will have to be subsidized and supported in an artificial way. And it can be a short-term solution, but it will not solve it in the long run. And it was also mentioned that the district heating system in Ukraine currently is characterized by low efficiency, outdated technology, amortization, and as a result, huge losses in heat energy and losses when using the system. Almost 50% of the total amount of heating networks need to be modernized. Aside from that, another issue is the district heating safety and security, so that we can keep supplying district heating even despite the Russia's attacks on energy enterprises. What was done by the Russia has demonstrated that district heating system also requires implementation of different solutions at the local level, taking into account the martial law as well as using a small local level district heating generation. Because back in the day, it was considered that a larger power plants were considered to be a better solution, and pre-war, during the peaceful days, it probably was a well-thought thing to say. And this kind of power plants provided us with electricity and heating, but tables have turned. And large power plants pose a large target. To make the system less vulnerable, we have to create a different type of heating generation. And clearly, we're not talking about only making it less vulnerable during the attacks, but it also will require less balancing. It will lead to less loss in the grid because production and consumption are very close to each other. And it also allows you to use local types of fuel. This kind of generation can be implemented with the help of small size installations, which is widely used in Europe and which we also started using in Ukraine. And in Ukraine, small and large installations prior to the war used to produce 30% of all of the heat energy and all of the electricity. That is why it is very important to increase the efficiency, their productivity. And in the framework of Directive 27, a law on highly efficient energy generation was adopted, which laid the groundwork for implementing high efficiency cogeneration. Also, the methodology for assessing ability cogeneration were developed. Next month, we will be the and really efficient installations. This is how the energy sector is being currently improved and restored. We're trying to use all of the local types of power and energy. Here we're talking about cogeneration, using heat pumps, about using waste, because we have a very present issue with the waste management in the country. So we have to also take this resource into account and include it into the energy balance, energy mixture in Ukraine. And another kind of the renewable energy of the heat power are solar storages. Sadly, this resource is underestimated in Ukraine, but it is way cheaper than using solar panels to produce electricity. And they can be used, and the solar collectors can be used and should be used more. We have to develop a comprehensive approach to retrofitting our systems of district heating. And currently there is a law that has been passed on energy efficiency, and it also laid a framework for implementing the system of energy efficient district heating. And it was also adopted in the framework of the Transport and the Directive Energy Efficiency, and it says that the efficiency of district heating system are the system where at least 50% of energy comes from the renewable energy sources, or the waste heat, or the one that is using more than 75% of cogeneration. So this is the system that we should aspire for. The maximum use of local types of fuel is an important factor to provide for energy independence of Ukraine. Ukraine has a very powerful agri sector. And before war, there were 4.7 megawatt of energy produced using biofuel. At the moment, during the war, using the biofuel boiling units is happening, but it is still not satisfactory. The level of it is not satisfactory. And the Directive 28 about the use of renewable energy sources mentions that, first and foremost, talking about bioenergy, we're supposed to use waste from agriculture, grow energy efficient types of plants, and only having used this potential, also start using grain crops.
Наголосити на цьому, що нова редакція 28-ї директиви
And I would like to say that the new version of Directive 28, RED 3, sets more stringent requirements to the use of agricultural crops as biofuel. If we wanted to pursue the EU accession process, we have to abide by these regulations and requirements. It was already mentioned today, we have to use the waste from the agriculture, but not the agriculture produce for the biofuel. Speaking about problems and speaking about solutions, a lot has been said, but I would like to outline a number of other issues that still exist in this sector. Sometimes there are artificial solutions that are offered. In a short-term perspective, it helps, but it is just a quick fix that is not sustainable. Since the beginning of the war, there has been a ban installed. It has already been mentioned, and I believe that this decision was justified. But the compensation between the economically substantiated tariff and the subsidized tariff could only be provided to those who are working with natural gas. But we understand that those who are using biofuel are not entitled to such a compensation, although the prices on biofuel are rising. And it means that we cannot proceed with the further uptake of biogas and biofuels. Besides, there is an issue whether the new consumers who do not want to be connected to the grid, and we have to make this market competitive. There has to be free access to the heating network for new players, and it will help us in terms of the competition. Although the National Energy and Utilities Regulation Commission reconsidered its requirements, the process of connecting to the grid is rather complicated. There are some technical requirements, the issue of covering the costs of connection is not properly regulated, among other problems. Besides, I would like to draw your attention to the small cogeneration. We all know that there are certain advantages to such solutions. The use of small cogeneration plants, even for the utility companies, help a lot in case of power outages. They help to provide the boiler houses with electricity in case of a power outage. When such cogeneration plants are coupled, we can provide the electricity to the sites that are sites to the enterprises that are part of the critical infrastructure. We already had such examples, and such a solution is a success. A year ago, there were certain issues with the small cogeneration installations with the capacity under 5 megawatts, but the issues have been resolved, and currently there is an opportunity to use such cogeneration installations. The process of commissioning the cogeneration plants has been simplified. There is the order of the Cabinet of Ministers providing for such simplification. An environmental impact assessment issue has been resolved as well. Taking all that into account and considering the cost efficiency of cogeneration plants, I believe that this could be a profitable option. You know that there was a program also run by USAID that was aimed at cogeneration installations. All those factors combined showed us a lot of prospects for the small cogeneration installations and their use in our municipal heat supplying enterprises. Despite all those advantages of small cogeneration installations, the regions had to face an issue of lack of professionals. There were no, there were not enough specialists who were able of coupling the installations and connecting them into one island. That is why our state agency on energy efficiency is looking for the opportunities to raise the awareness in terms of cogeneration and other solutions. We want to speed up the uptake of renewable energy sources. We have launched a tool that contains the information on a university, the best practices. This is the platform for resources. It contains the information on best available techniques. We hope to add more information to this catalog, and we are inviting all donors and all stakeholders to take a look at this platform that we developed, maybe they would suggest to add something. And this is the tool that is aimed at promoting energy efficiency and energy efficient solutions and the use of renewables. This platform also facilitates the introduction of systems of energy management and energy audit and the use of ESCO contracts. The Agency on Energy Efficiency is now working closer with the regions. We wanted to launch decarbonization and just transition offices in each region. Some of them have already been inaugurated, for instance, in Kharkiv, Khmelnytsky, Vinnytsia, and Zhytomyr. Through these offices, our agency will communicate with the local governments and local enterprises. In April, Energy Efficiency Fund will start its work. This fund has been established in order to collect the funds from the CO2 emissions tax and then to disperse this fund. Ministry of Infrastructure is now drafting the procedures of disbursement of these funds that could be used for loans on energy efficient solutions. Already now you could apply for the support from the government, from the financial aid from the government. For instance, there is an opportunity to get a grant for the feasibility study and to get other financial tools for your disposal. We are moving forward. We still have a couple of months to analyze this heating season and to prepare for the next one. We cannot waste time. And once again, I would like to underscore that it is very important to start working now when we see all the flaws of the heating season and we still have time to prepare for the upcoming heating season. Thank you very much, and I'm open to your questions. Thank you very much, Olena. We will have time for questions later. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Vadym Lytvyn, as he was among those who joined the pilot project that we started. There was a number of cities where we drafted the feasibility studies for the use of heat pumps. And we are not talking about the fourth generation. We are talking about the amenities that already are available in those cities. And Vadim will tell us more about that. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'll try to be brief. Let me give you an update on our study, and I will also tell you about the recent developments after concluding the feasibility study. With regard to heating pumps, heat pumps, we have found out that there is high prospect for this solution, but heat pumps cannot resolve everything in the existing system. And maybe that's good news, since the system that would be most efficient, that is the system that would benefit from the existing district heating system, but also using uh, additional solutions for the hot water. The main source for heating is district heating system, and over here you see that we could tap into the opportunities that are offered by heat pumps as a solution. You see that those heat pumps in case if the ambient for 5 degrees, but for the winter time, we can use the district heating system. We believe that district heating system could be also an additional solution when it comes to the system of electricity supply. Cogeneration was mentioned many times today, and even this month, there were certain power outages, and we had to also to switch off the solar collectors and our solar energy sources since we were producing too much energy. And of course, that would be more cost efficient if we were able to use it for heating water. Well, over here you see how we could integrate these solutions into one system using the heat pump and using the district heating system. One more thing to mention is the fact that heat pumps work with the system of hot water supply. You know, I know that many cities decided to refuse from the district heating system. The reasons were economical mostly, since they were making losses. Now, when the gas prices went up and hopefully the electricity prices would go up, the price for the centralized system of hot water supply would become more profitable. So if you still have the centralized system and if you still have this district heating system, just preserve it and wait until it becomes profitable. This is another option, the use of the ventilation system. There is a heat substation over here, and the district heating system is also used. In this scheme, we can provide for the end consumers the minimum prices on hot water. On this slide, you can see the information about return on investment. You see that the prices have been calculated under commercial prices. 6 hryvnia per kilowatt hour. And you see that the return on investment is from 4 to 6 years in this scenarios at this price. And this is the chart for the heating. And over here you see the comparison of the use of heating only and heating and hot water. So once again, we have an opportunity of using hot water not only for specific tasks just to supply hot water. We have other solutions. The district heating systems could benefit from the night tariffs and from the tariffs on the solar energy when there is too much energy in the grid, when there is an excessive energy. And now I would like to show another option The boiler houses could be located not far from the sewage systems and wastewater treating facilities. You see that there is this sewage pipe and the temperature is from 12 to 20 degrees Celsius. This option might also help, and the return on investment over here is 6 years. It is a viable solution, but it is viable if the system of hot water supply is restored. In its turn, it will also encourage the use of cogeneration installations, and it will to help you to become prosumers in the system. You will be able to sell your uh, energy into the system and at low price, but still you will be able to compete with the conventional boilers. As soon as the tariffs become compatible with the market prices, you are not making that much profit. You see the temperatures in the 40 degrees on return. This is for winter time. And it means that we could use these heat pumps, air source heat pumps. You can see also the heat transfer coefficient. And once again, just not to keep your hopes too high, they will reach the coefficient of performance factor 3, but still there are fluctuations depending on the seasons, summer or winter.
And here is comparison of different heat pumps, or rather the cost of heat in various heat pumps with various tariffs and the price for the gas. This is one of the elements that allows to pretty flexibly be present in the market, but understanding that in our present day context, it does not always work this way presently, but you have to be ready for the future change and start implementing pilot projects, which would allow you to learn how to manage them, because that would be a very good option. And of course, a good combination, as I have already mentioned earlier on, could be cogeneration with heat pumps, because in such case, you will not have to neither sell the excess, and you will be able to also purchase cheap electricity at the market. And this is the European trend. And we see that thanks to a large amount of solar power generated at certain time frames, the price can be pretty good looking, especially taking into account the COP. Well, this is it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them later. Vadym, I would like to ask you to also talk about the new legal system that allows the companies to earn money on energy efficiency measures. Could you please also underscore that to tell more about our experience of working on these documents? Okay, then in a nutshell, I think that colleagues had an opportunity to take a look at that, because I am also working with a large number of projects at the national level, and I see that one of good measures for cutting cost is installing the hidden centers that give you 10 to 20% cost cutting, and the hidden energy losses from the say if there are energy source companies, you are losing some profit, but if you, so to say, have become, has started controlling and imagine this process, and if you are sharing it with the consumer, I think you can first try to do that with the state-owned enterprises and institutions, the utilities companies and public institutions, because say you can be a certain service company. By selling economy, you can earn more than by selling the heat, because when selling heat, about 80%, maybe less, slightly less than that, basically your transit are letting it to yourself, and you're giving it away to Naftogaz or any other gas supply company. So having slightly shifted the paradigm and started selling economy instead of selling the heat, you will be keeping the money in your locality, and your overall profit can be way higher. So this is the option that you should work with, because the consumers will do that. They either will disconnect from the district heating, or they will start regulating it on their own, and they will only consume the necessary amounts. So it is the time to get the hold of this process. And judging from our home, it is minus 30% in terms of heat consumption compared to the next door house, and about 25% if we compare my house from 5 years earlier and now, when we have retrofitted it, introduced balance, and even balancing has not been covered, but also the insulation of the pipelines, so 25 to 30%. And we did it on our own. And if you, as the utility company, did on your own, about 50% would stay with you. And if you try doing some math, the money that you would not pay to Naftogaz, this would be your profit. And I, as a consumer, would also see that as something profitable, especially when I don't have to do that. Someone says, you'll pay 10% less, just don't interfere. And I would clearly sign up for that. So that's how you could also do it. Thank you, Vadym. Before I forget, I wanted to say that Ecoclub and our NGO has developed a guideline for the operators of the heating companies and municipalities. And we have outlined our vision of how various approaches can be used. Among other things, how the heat pumps can be used in the district heating systems. And also in those guidelines, we have also in a very much detail outlined the regulatory basis for the utility companies. So if you would like to get your hands on these guidelines, please do not forget to mention that in the questionnaire after our event is over. Okay, now, we already had the representatives from the state institutions, international companies. I'd like to give the floor to the representatives of the communities, because they are the ones who are firsthand responsible for what they own. And despite multiple positive statements made today, sadly, only some utility companies managed to achieve some success, and one of them is Zviahel. And I have invited the head of this enterprise and head of the department at the city council, so that they could share about their experience and tell us about the result that they have managed to achieve. So Yuriy, Lytvyn, over to you. Hello, can you hear us well? Well, first and foremost, I would like to express the gratitude to the event organizers for such a substantial and helpful event that has been organized today for all of us. And the number of participants, it is another proof of that. Almost 200 people have joined us today. We understand that heat supply and district heating is first and foremost problem in our regions, because For us, only if we're talking about the public institutions, the expenditure for supplying heat to them is about 70%. And nationwide, the situation is more or less the same. Now, understanding the difficulties of the budget process, understand that also our budget is now shrinking, and understanding that the majority of the municipalities already have signed the Covenant of Mayors, where first and foremost decarbonization is online, basically decreasing the CO2 emissions and improving the district heating system is crucial, as it was mentioned by previous speakers, because retrofitting and modernizing heating supply systems and grids is something that can allow us to cut the costs at the local budget, also decrease the emissions and improve the situation, especially in the cities. I would like to also thank our previous speakers, because the representatives of the state institutions have raised some very important issues, and we see that they understand the challenges that we're faced with at the local level. It is very good that Natalia has mentioned that it is time to reform the tariff system in Ukraine, because it does not currently contribute to introduce a more energetic use of the alternative sources. Also, the tariffs that are fixed price for the consumers. I would also like to ask Ms. Olena for creating the national decarbonization platform, because first and foremost, each municipality can work on their vision and submit their projects to get some additional co-funding, so that potential donors could see that, in fact, quite a few municipalities, because Zviahel is not an exception, the majority of those who are present today at this meeting have also developed some feasibility studies, some projects, but during the wartime, the resources in communities are limited. Therefore, thanks to the platform, they can obtain help from international donors, among others, such as GIZ, USAID, and NAFCO, all those who were mentioned today. And thanks to them, we can retrofit and modernize heating systems. Now, a few words about our community, about what we're doing, then I'll give the floor to Ludmila so that she can tell more about their enterprise, which is one of the best among small and medium-sized towns in Ukraine. Zviahel community is located in Zhytomyr Oblast, in the western part, and Zviahel is located between halfway between Kyiv and Lviv. The population is 55,000 people, and speaking about why energy efficiency is something that so much attention is paid to. First and foremost, we're talking about the budgetary expense, because in about 90% of communities, the utilities expenditure probably is the first budget line. So as I have mentioned, it is a budgetary issue, and we also are the signatory party of the Covenant of Mayors, or a member of the energy efficient Ukrainian towns and cities. So decarbonization is always put highly on the agenda for our local council. I'd like to once again thank to Vadym, Lytvyn, and Ecoclub in general for helping us last year with your expert support, and we managed to develop the program for renewable energy sources by 2030 for our community, which basically allowed us to analyze all of the available kinds and types of alternative energy resources that can be applied and used in our community, which have to do with solar power, biomass, heat pumps that could be implemented with the help of our own resources, as well as the help of external investors. And we have realized that heating system is also one of the key sectors where we would like to focus on some projects. Well, given that I have already mentioned renewable energy, thanks to Ecoclub and support of the MPs and councillors who already have 4 solar stations that are in operation in our community. We're planning to also to build even more, which is a very important step towards decarbonization. We're planning to commission even more because it can also provide for the energy security, especially when it comes to our critical infrastructure and other facilities. Aside from that, we're also looking at the feasibility study that have to do with biomass, because the peculiarity in the city of Savych is that only one of our pumping stations out of 26 is using hard fuel. And this year, Vadym already has mentioned in detail introduction of heat pumps. So together with Ecoclub, we will be also installing a heat pump at a kindergarten, where the one that has a pool for the preschool. This is a kindergarten for with a pool for preschoolers, and we want to make it more efficient so that we can also cut cost and use less energy when it comes to heating. Aside from that, we're implementing projects on energy efficient accommodation for IDPs together with NAFCO and Infomedica, the German organization. And 2 houses are supposed to be constructed this year, and they're going through the retrofitting, and the solar power plant with 30 megawatt will be installed. So we're trying to use all the mechanisms to decrease energy consumption in our community and to be more energy efficient and self-reliant. And a few more words about, of course, decrease in energy consumption on the one hand is a big advantage for the local budget, for the population in the community, but we also understand that on the other hand, the issue is that our municipal enterprise, that is the only supplier of heat, will be receiving less funds because they will be supplying less. And we would like to thank Ecoclub for their assistance, because, you know, we want to look at both sides of this double-edged sword. And of course, we are thinking about installing the individual heating units this year and a heat pump, but we want it to be useful. And I'm not going to go into detail now. Maybe Mikhailo, if he'll feel like it, he will add something. We would like these units to be maintained by our municipal enterprise, and we understand that the more than 70% was the price of the gas, which was the transit price, so that they can get their 20% that they will be losing by maintaining this additional units and additional network. So on the one hand, there will be less energy consumption. On the other hand, the utility company will be able to cover their loss by working with the new facilities. So we hope that we'll get some support from the international donors. By the way, Mr. Winfried mentioned that their project is helping to develop heat supply systems, and we also need that. We need to develop the new heat supply scheme in accordance with the newly approved regulations. So we'll be happy to once again collaborate with GIZ, because this year we will be implementing 2 projects with GIZ. The one was about the heat pump that I have mentioned earlier on, and also in one of our schools in Lyceum number 4, we will be also improving the heating system. So we will be very pleased to collaborate with GIZ, and we'll do our best. So now I'd like to give the floor to Lyudmila so that she can tell you more about her enterprise. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. Greetings to everyone. I would like to say a few words about Zviahel. It is a municipal enterprise at the city council that is working with 26 boiler houses. So one is using firewood, the other natural gas. 24 are working in the automated mode. And the parameters go to the dispatch facility, and we have 2 persons working there. The length of the networks is 22 kilometers, and 74% have the insulation. The loss of heat is up to 6%. All of the boiler houses have the diesel generator in case they get disconnected from the power supply. Our enterprise is providing heating to 539,000 square kilometers of the area. The installed capacity is square meters. The debt for gas is about the amount of the debt that the state has, and we hope that this tariff difference will be reimbursed as soon as possible. Year after year, we're implementing investment programs. Out of 26, 24 boiler houses we have gone through the technical retrofitting in the last 10 years. We are planning to work with one more boiler house this year, and there are 2 more boiler houses for 16 and 7.5 megawatt, and we would like to attract investment to switch to the more energy efficient production there and use then alternative sources. Another thing is the law on personification of access to personal data. So I understand that all of the utility companies will agree with me that we do not have access to personification or personal data of our consumers. And at the moment, many people have left. Many people have sold their apartments. Many people died, and therefore we're faced with issues because the people come with the documents to request for inheritance at the notary office, and it can be used for 75 years. So it takes 75 years to obtain your inheritance. And here we also have a pretty high level of debt that is not being repaid. Well, I guess this is it from me. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Здається, що все так просто. Але ж, мабуть, шлях був до того.
Yes, I actually have a question. It seems like everything is so easy, but probably if we take into consideration the percentage that you mentioned and the average values for Ukraine, probably you have gone a long way to get there. How much time did it take you, and how did you do that? We were using the investment programs, and we abide by those programs. We started insulating pipes, and we started using pre-insulated pipes since 2000. We were able to replace over 4 kilometers of pipes. And we are trying to keep the maintenance of these pipes on an annual basis. Our losses were 13 to 14% before we switched to PE pipes. And we are using our own workforce, which helps us to cut the cost. Are you talking about an investment program for municipal enterprise? Yes, that was an investment program for municipal enterprise. And I would like to add to that, in 2024, we adopted our municipal program for 3 years. That program will provide annual funding on energy efficiency measures, including the measures for thermal modernization of the state-owned buildings, and some of those funds would be used on energy efficient solutions. In 2010, did you use the city budget for your municipal enterprise? No, we were using the investment funds of our enterprise. We were using our own funds for modernization and retrofitting. Our boiler houses are working on the schedule 50 to 70, and our consumers have no objections with regard to that. Thank you very much, Yuriy and Ludmila. And I believe that now we can take questions. I will read them out one by one. And if you don't mind, I will tell you who the question is addressed to, but if you want to, you may put it down. Is it possible to decouple the heating into heat transportation and then the use of heat? Maybe this is the question to the representatives of government agencies. If we still have Mr. Andriy with us or Ms. Elena Lenska, could they take this question?
Я скажу, що в принципі в
Well,
сьогоднішніх умовах, де
I should say that
існує
under current conditions, where we have the surplus of heat generating capacities, and this is what I mentioned in my intervention, connection of new consumers would help in terms of the competition. So if we overcome this hurdle, the hurdle of joining the market, that will be the first step in introducing the market conditions and the heat supply market. Apart from that, we understand that the pricing policy has to be changed, and the Ministry of Infrastructure representative mentioned that as well. The tariffs that are highly regulated do not give us much space for setting tariffs. We have to take action now, step by step, but we have to take into consideration all the factors. We have to engage all the relevant authorities, including the National Energy and Utilities Regulation Commission. We are getting requests from businesses in terms of the proper tariff setting. They say that with the proper market prices, they would be happy to join the market. And that would help to reduce the price on heating. But unfortunately, that is not the case until it is not the case today. We need to analyze the European experience and the systems that exist in Ukraine. We have no other option but to look into these opportunities. If we lose control over the situation now, the new cities or new districts would not join the district heating system, and we will lose the sector in general. Well, if I'm not mistaken, in the past 20 years, the number of consumers went down twice, by 2 times. Currently, there is just a half of the consumers that we used to have. And I have a question about the tariff policy and investments. All we need the investments and for depreciation as well. The investment amount for 2023-2024 is 2,400,000 hryvnia. And I also wanted to mention that in the month of February, we are launching a tender for pipelines. We always had the tender bids with the prices that were 30, 40, 40% lower than the amount that we had. But now, out of this 2,600,000, we had an offer that is the half. And we need to announce another tender, and we will buy as many pipes as possible. Well, in your opinion, what should be the composition of this investment cost? We need to have the return on investment rate of up to 10%. The next question is to Vadym Lytvyn. Could we use solar panels for the boiler houses? But the solar panels cannot be installed on the rooftops of the boiler houses. Where do we find the solar panels for the boiler houses of 4-6 megawatts of capacity? We conducted studies for the solar panels as well. And yes, indeed, you cannot install the solar panels on the rooftop of the boiler house. You have to look for another premise, some other place that could be used for the panels to be installed. But you need to take into consideration the following factors. The solar power plants are providing a lot of energy, and sometimes the consumers do not need that much energy. If you do not use the hot water supply, probably solar panels would not be your best solution. That is the solution that is more profitable for water supply companies. But if you do have a hot water supply in your system, you may opt for solar panels. And you can use heat pumps as well with the direct heating. And do not forget about the management and storage system. And in that case, you will be able to accumulate the surplus of solar energy in solar accumulators. And these accumulators, solar accumulators, cost 10 times less than the electric ones. In our study, we also saw that the sales, that selling of this energy does not make much sense cost-wise, as it is rather cheap in summer. Summing it all up, first and foremost, rooftops of well, that is not an option for the boiler houses due to the low capacity as well. You may consider connecting it to the boiler house, but only if you have a hot water supply in the system as well. And another probable solution, if you have the hot water supply system, maybe you shouldn't install just one big installation, but rather take a loan and install the system that would heat up the water, you may install the solar collector for a building.
Дякую. Зразу повідомлю, що в чаті в нас є оцінка сьогоднішнього
Thank
заходу.
you.
Ми будемо ще
We
питання
also
також
will
є.
have
Прошу
the
оцінити
feedback
підхід
for
наших
our
лобістів, раз,
event,
фактично
so
всі
you
розбіжності
could
громадам, які бажають
assess our
розвивати
today's event,
приватну
and we
для того,
also
щоб
will
нам
send you
зробити з
the
ними
questionnaire on the district
групу
heating.
і разом
We would like to find partners over here that would like to join forces so that we could proceed with our bright future. I have a question to Ludmila Todorovich. When it comes to the tariffs, what part is the part for distribution and which part is transportation and which part is the actual use? And what about the loss in the heat system? It is up to 6%. Well, it depends on the section of the pipeline. And there are the heat losses of 4% or even 1%. It depends. But we have 24% of pipes that are the old pipes that are not pre-insulated pipes. Next question is to Zviahel City Council. Could you tell us where can we find information about the renewable energy and energy efficiency program for Zviahel City? Well, you can find on the website the information about some of the sites, some of the facilities, and some of those facilities are part of critical infrastructure. Given that we are living in war times, we have to take into consideration security issues. That is why this program is not of public access. But if you wanted to get some specific information, just send us a request and we will be happy to share that information. Thank you. Is there any support for the communities that want to switch to new solutions and that are using currently CHPs? Olena, are you with us? Can you tell us more about the state programs?
Ну, наскільки я знаю, що зараз є грантові якісь програми. От що стосується
Well,
енергоефективності,
as far as I know, there are some grant programs. When it comes to the energy efficiency programs, we are now working on the order of the use of the funds of energy efficiency. As soon as it is finalized, we will have understanding of how it could be actually used, how the funds could be dispersed. So just look for updates on our website. Thank you. I have a question to Andriy Martynyuk. What is the right way of attracting investments for central heating? And what are the right ways to find funding for the communities? Well, in general, I believe that it is rather difficult since those tariffs that exist nowadays, in most cases, pose barriers to real investments, meaning making profit out of those investments. The current tariffs do not cover for all the losses, for all the costs. Therefore, we cannot speak about the investments. But how can we talk about the investments in this regard? In my opinion, and Vadym also attested to it, there are various technical solutions for those facilities that are financed from the city budget or from the state budget. With regard to these facilities, there are some opportunities to have a short return on investment, quick return on investment. From our experience, and we've been working with the communities for over 2 years now. First and foremost, we have to decide about the ideas, and we have to prepare the feasibility studies, but the real ones, the accurate ones. Also, you have to talk to stakeholders, and you need to get all the information, as well as run all the necessary calculations and sit down with the engineers. The preliminary feasibility study is rather simple, and the feasibility studies for the water supply companies that would like to use the solar power plants, those documents are very complicated. If you have such documents already prepared in your community, that gives you more chances for getting the funding, as you can already show something that may be the foundation for some project. In case you do not have this kind of documents, unfortunately, you are not able to talk about the specific figures and numbers. I expect that there will be a question, do we do something like that? Yes, we do, but we are limited in funds. We have a special application form for the hospitals. So we are helping them with the solar panels. But in general, just send us a letter with your ideas. We will try to help. I don't know if my answer met your expectations, but once again, just send us an email and we will try to find an opportunity to help. Thank you, Andriy. I put our feedback form into the chat, and the questionnaire, there's something wrong with it, but we will send it to you via emails. Mr. Winfried, a number of communities had a question to you. Could you provide your contact details?
Sure. They are on my slides, but just type winfried.damm@giz.de. So my name is a dot in between and then at giz.de. And you can write also in Ukrainian, but I'm sorry, I only understand English or German myself, but my colleagues are fluent in Ukrainian.
Так, дякую. Ну і бачите, як і свідчить наш попередній досвід
Thank
і
you.
наші звички закінчувати і
As we already learned from our experience, we also made it in time this time. We were able to take most of the questions. If there are any questions remaining, please send them to our email.
за результатами нашого сьогоднішнього
Follow our updates on the upcoming events, and after our 2 days event, based on your feedback, we will
частину громад, які
pick
налаштовані
a
серйозно
number of communities that want to look into the solutions for the district heating system, and hopefully at the end of this year we will go to one of the European countries and we will learn from their experience. We will see how their municipal enterprises work or how other suppliers of heating operate there. Thank you for making time. I hope that our today's event was useful, and see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
На зв'язку.
Thank you. Keep in touch.
Так, хто ще не оцінив і не вийшов, будь ласка, оцініть. Це нам дуже важливо.
Please do not forget to assess our event before leaving.